Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th webinar in the ALMA 2020 webinar series. My name is Thad Gurley, and I will be moderating today's discussion on After the Shutdown, Back to Business as Unusual. We like for our webinars to be interactive, so we urge you to submit your questions at any time during the webinar. Our speakers will address the questions at the conclusion of the webinar. Please use the question box on your GoToWebinar browser to submit questions. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, but if we run out of time during the question and answer session, I will forward any unanswered questions to the presenters. Additional resources for the webinar are located on the right side of your screen. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the ALMA website shortly following the webinar. I would especially like to thank our sponsor, Agilent, for sponsoring our 7th webinar. Without their sponsorship, we would be unable to provide the webinar to our ALMA community free of charge. So with that, I would like to introduce our speakers today, Diane Amato, John Murray, and Melissa Zeier. Diane is a Lean Six Sigma consultant with Agilent Technologies whose main goal is to bring process improvement methodologies to customers to improve their business operations. Diane has a clinical laboratory background working with Quest Diagnostics, where she began her Six Sigma journey. She was among the first 15 black belts trained across the company in the year 2000 and remains true to her laboratory and process improvement roots today. Her passion for the lab is as an integral part of the bettering patient lives, combined with her analytical and focused approach to improvement, provides clarity for customers to find their way through challenging changes and transform their current options. John is extensively experienced in designing and leading inventory management programs across the Americas. He has applied his project management skills across multiple sectors, including pharma, crime and biologics, and health and beauty. John offers reliable consultation on instrument and workflow requirements and laboratory design, and successfully manages large laboratory relocations. He is a subject matter expert and a train-the-trainer for relocation logistics, management, service strategy, and inventory programs. John is working towards his PNP certification and has an AS in mechanical engineering. Melissa has been in the drug development, testing, and laboratory services industries for over 15 years. She began her career in big pharma working in high-throughput biomarker testing, then moved into the preclinical contract testing field, specializing in chiral analytic method development for LC-MS. Melissa transitioned to auditing GLP bioanalytical studies before exercising her expertise in the pharma and biopharma sectors as a business intelligence analyst, driving product and service development in the preclinical testing industry for a top 3 preclinical CRO. Melissa has a BS in chemistry with minors in cellular biology and mathematics, and an MS in analytical chemistry, and an MA in applied economics. Diane, John, and Melissa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Thad, for the introduction. In today's webinar, we're going to give suggestions, tips, and considerations for returning to lab operations following shutdowns or changes to regular business that may have occurred over the past few months. We will address checklists and schedules, asset management process opportunities, and some changes that may occur. Let's get started with our webinar, After the Shutdown, Back to Business as Unusual. But first, let's go to our first polling question. So please do take a minute and fill out this poll, and then we'll have a look at the results before we move on. Okay, great. So that first polling question, if you were to rank the most important output of your lab or group, what would it be? It seems like compliance is right up there near the top, but scientific results ultimately are what the people on this call at this webinar are most important, consider their most important output. So back to our webinar here. I'm Melissa Zeier. I'm an applications expert with Agilent Technologies. I work with the sales team to discuss the technical aspects of our lab productivity solutions with customers. Today, we will talk about returning to productive lab operations in the new normal working environment. COVID has affected us all, and we will address the positive impact that your asset management strategy can have on the productivity of your changing labs. We will review service, inventory, and instrument utilization considerations for short-term and long-term planning, and the effective roles and responsibilities necessary to restore labs. The world's population has a lot of feelings related to the pandemic. One of the most pervasive, common feelings is that of gratitude to our scientists, essential workers, and all of the people working to keep us safe. Thank you to all of you. Now to business. Every one of us contributes to the success of our businesses at a variety of points in the operational processes. The impact of getting to market faster and more efficiently affects more than the bottom line. Though it has been difficult to see what normal will be through the uncertainty of the past few months, business responsibilities to patients and consumers, to employees, and to society remain paramount. Patients and consumers are relying on the innovation and initiative of companies to improve their lives. Companies are relying on their employees to meet societal needs of these times and of the future. The environment that you operate in has changed, and perhaps even your business goals, but these priorities have not. Almost everyone in all industries has been impacted by current events. Supply chains have been disrupted, and legislation has been passed that will affect our supply chains and regulations into the future. Research, development, and testing activities that are not currently focused on the current global health concerns have been delayed or put on hold. Access to customers and markets may have been limited by business closures, site closures, or visitor limitations. Many facilities have implemented critical need-only site restrictions to support efforts of social distancing or current business need, and other functional groups are working overtime to address acute needs with critical operations outpacing recent periods of performance. The list of impacts goes on. This paradigm shift will lead to new modes of operation. We are all in this together, and Agilent is here to help you plan for getting back to business as unusual. We're going to give some tips and pointers today that will help you produce results. Amid changes to the way we all do business, Agilent has maintained and will continue to maintain our commitment to providing our customers with the support needed now and into the future. By providing operational visibility and collaboration on services, inventory, and instrument utilization, Agilent will help you to simplify your workflows, optimize your processes, spend, and availability, and transform your lab operations to achieve a high level of efficiency and success. Our laboratory operations expertise, in concert with our data-driven decision process, will help you advance your organization's efficiency and continue to guide you on your journey to laboratory excellence. Your business needs and priorities will ultimately drive your operational decisions, so let's talk about some logical, data-driven asset management processes that you can undertake that will help you meet the challenges you're facing. The location of instruments and asset inventory should be driven by desired workflows. Workflows will be driven by business needs. Utilization of preparation and analytical instruments can provide visibility into workflow capacity and ramp to volume, and also influence needs and scheduling. Now, before we get into that, I would like to mention Agilent University. We're all experiencing new levels of work-life integration. While home, you can take advantage of Agilent courses designed to learn about your instruments and applications. About half of our courses are offered online, are at no charge, and there are now some live virtual instructor-led courses as well. Our children are learning via hybrid models, and we can too. Okay, so let's refresh on asset lifecycle and asset management. Within every lab, assets and instruments undergo a life cycle. You may have experienced disruption to operations, but you are still within the asset life cycle. Asset management is the support of that life cycle of instruments to ensure they produce reliable results to advance science. As we saw in our first poll, the most important output of most of our lab is in fact those scientific results, so we need to maintain our equipment. Procuring, maintaining, servicing, utilizing, and disposing of instruments are all part of asset management. Now, as much as ever, you rely on your instruments. So let's refresh on asset lifecycle and asset management. Within every lab, assets and instruments undergo a life cycle. You've experienced this disruption, but you're still within that life cycle. In the new normal of operations, we will see reduced staffing at sites and schedules staggered with on-site and work-from-home days. We see limited capacity and limited work and contact hours. We must be prepared for change and be ready to adapt. This is the current new normal. Diane is going to take over and walk you through considerations as you get back to business as unusual, but ultimately your business priorities, including the safety of employees, will drive your back to business processes. Diane?
Thank you, Melissa. I'm Diane Amato, and I do work with the Agilent program and project managers to drive process improvements using data analytics and process examinations. And some of my work is done in collaboration with customers to identify process bottlenecks that facilitate process improvements and to analyze data that drives insights to outcomes that assist our customers in reaching their business goals. So here's our second polling question. If you would move to the next, there we go. Thank you. This is interesting. So what non-core related task is your biggest time sink? And the most chosen answer at this webinar with this group is inefficient communication. Second is scheduling and social distancing support. So this really tells us kind of where we are with the times, right? With that scheduling and social distancing support coming up as the second highest answer. I am a firm believer in communication as one of the most critical aspects of work, anyone's work, quite honestly. So it's interesting to see that come up here as the biggest time sink, which is not core related. So back to life cycle asset management. In my mind, it is the foundation of a well-managed lab. As a laboratorian, you face constant changes in your lab, and not just when there's a global pandemic, but all the time. Instruments need to be replaced or relocated, project priorities shift, lab staff changes. Having a strong handle on your assets and their health facilitates flexibility. A structured asset management program enables lab operational elasticity, establishing agility in your organization and allowing your lab to shape-shift based on supporting the changing business goals. So as we identify new business goals, lifecycle asset management becomes a critical component of success. At a high level, these three categories represent the basic areas of asset management to consider as you ramp up productions and lean into your new current business goals. It's critical to know if any of the items in each of these three areas are impacted by your new business goals. As an example, your instruments. Lots of questions regarding the protocol for instrument shutdown. Was it followed? Was it followed completely? Who are the major players you will need to start your assets back up? Do you need any new equipment, different equipment? Do you need to think about co-locating pieces of equipment, creating cells that support new workflows? Creating a work cell that diminishes the movement of samples and people, which is a major form of waste in the lean world, not only saves time, but also drives employee ownership of the timely completion of a product or service. Being process-driven as I am, work cells are a thing of beauty because they're built based on workflow, on the process steps that are required, and they are very visual. It's typically easy to understand at what stage the work in process is in a work cell. I have done many a spaghetti map, which is a simple tool to visualize the movement of people, samples, and resources during a particular process. And I find bottlenecks and collisions that can easily be solved by the implementation of work cells, Compliance. Are you knowledgeable of all the PMs or qualifications you need to shore up to continue your science? Is there a more efficient way to schedule the PMs and the OQs, etc.? Are there opportunities to co-schedule similar events requiring a visit by the same OEM? How will the changes in the PM schedules impact you financially now and next year? Consumables. Do you have the supplies you need? Have any reagents expired during the shutdown? Do you have any new supply needs based on your new business goals? There might be new business goals for your lab, so a new paradigm is there to be supported. We want to understand those critical business goals and what it means for our current fleet of assets. Can we support the new goals with our current inventory? And how do we kickstart the new workflows? Projects that may have been on the back burner could now be a top priority. An LCMS that has been sitting idle could now be running 24/7 and might need an immediate PM. Lab staff may only be working on-site part-time, so need remote access to software tools and to analyze data. Agilent program managers are here to help support you in identifying business critical assets, where there is additional instrument capacity in your assets or other assets across your site, as well as what services needs to be prioritized. To tackle this new frontier, I would recommend creating a project plan to ensure the successful delivery of critical items that will allow you to work within your new paradigm. A well-planned project will highlight risks, required resources, and financial implications of moving to your new normal. A critical phase of your project plan is the discovery phase, which focuses on gathering the information you need to understand. The items identified in the discovery phase are essential to address and lead to the development of a rigorous execution plan. The team that does this type of planning needs to be cross-functional and representative of the critical pieces of your lab operations. Some key considerations are, what do I need? Identify any gaps in equipment and prioritize your resources. Are my IT systems ready to accept new results? Do I have any gaps in my SOPs that need to be corrected and filled? And what activities need to occur before I can start my new work? And finally, the project plan. As I said, a rigorous plan becomes so critical because without it, we won't know who or what we need when. During this phase, keep a holistic view of your lab. This will drive instrument purchase and vendor and OEM scheduling efficiencies. Now moving on to risk mitigation, but first let's look at our third polling question. Okay, the maintenance schedule for our laboratory is based on, the number one answer is equipment utilization, and then historical records and methods, as well as industry guidelines are second. This one is more evenly spread out here. So I love the fact that equipment utilization came up because sometimes we kind of base our maintenance schedule on, like an annual or a biannual type of time. And when you include the equipment utilization, in my mind, you get more effective and rightly timed, if I could say, PMs. So, and I think Melissa will be speaking a little bit towards, a utilization aspect or sensor technologies that Agilent does offer. So this was a very interesting question. Thank you. So moving on to our project plan and risk mitigation, even the best of project plans tend to go awry. Let's use a scheduled maintenance item as an example. What happens when that well thought out plan gets thrown into chaos? While the short term requires prioritization to get back on track, it's important to stay cognizant of how this will affect your long term program. So Agilent, again, our program managers, enables you to plan for any risks and the acceleration of your operation causes. So back to the PM example. Right now, let's say the most important thing is to getting your lab is to getting 17 of your 30 HPLC fleet up and running. Many PMs on this fleet were missed during the shutdown. So this may mean having 17 of your 30 HPL systems PM'd and qualified in a single month because they were due and they were missed during the shutdown. While getting this testing done is a top priority for now, it has long-term effects on your maintenance schedule next year. Having 17 of 30 HPLCs due for a PM and a qualification in 1 month would cause significant disruption and downtime for your lab in 2021. So identifying this type of risk now and mitigating it by proactively adjusting your maintenance schedule for next year will ensure that your operations are not significantly impacted. In addition to the risk mitigation we just touched upon, here are some other opportunities that can be taken advantage of as your business goals reshape your lab. You might have an opportunity to consolidate asset service contracts and free up budget while decreasing downtime. Identifying your critical instruments and ensuring they have the right level of support is an opportunity at this time. Free yourself of unused equipment and put those monies elsewhere. Examine logical spacing and movement of equipment to provide the safest operating environment for staff and to also increase lab capacity. Understand your workflows and build the right work cells to improve your throughput and capacity. Take a look at alternative buying models. Trade-ins, refurbished equipment, and instruments are a great way to increase redundancy on a tight budget. So as we have seen, an accurate inventory is critical to efficient asset management. I will now transition the show to John, who will discuss inventory management. John?
Thank you, Diane. Hi, everybody. My name is John Murray, and I'm a subject matter for everything inventory at Agilent. I'm also a trainer and a teacher mentoring Agilent colleagues on a variety of topics and special projects. Over the next few slides, we'll be discussing something that is near and dear to me, which, well, you guessed it, it's inventory. While an inventory is helpful when identifying critical business needs, I believe it is imperative when crafting plans to actually meet those needs. So today, you'll walk away with at least 3 pieces of information. First, we'll lead off with some methodology so you can create a single source of truth. Then, we're going to look at the risks of inaccuracy and how a complete inventory can answer more questions than it raises. And finally, we'll look at how this information fits into today's world and why inventory is a critical piece of restoring operations. So, what is inventory methodology? Well, a sound method delivers accurate results, right? An inventory can be a lot of work that may require dedicated time or resources. And if we are going to invest those, we want to ensure a reliable output. Here on the screen is one of the most common mistakes we see out in the field. Take this lovely Agilent LC system. Look at how many different ways information is being input here on the left. This information isn't for the complete system, it's for one module, the auto sampler. If all these options are for one piece of one system, which there are dozens of in the lab, imagine how quickly an inventory can lose value, right? So how do we avoid these pitfalls? Well, we'll take a look at some best practices, but first, let's dive into another polling question. So please take a moment to read and respond to the polling question on your screen, which is going to address who is responsible for maintaining an asset inventory in your lab. All right. So we can see there's a variety of answers out there. Some organizations use metrology or finance and procurement staff. Some rely on the scientific staff themselves, but an overwhelming majority relies on lab management. And we know lab managers already have a full plate. So that means somebody's putting on another hat and taking time out of their daily activity to conduct this inventory. But remember, no matter who is responsible for inventory, we are targeting the same thing, which is a complete and accurate asset inventory. Now let's dive into some best practices. So while you are crafting your return to operations plan, this is a great time to reevaluate your assets, to know what you have and where you have it. Here's a list of best practices that Agilent employs. Things like formatting the information to match your inventory management system or CMMS database. And making a checklist for all the areas and labs that need to be verified. Like Diane said, a successful project is the result of a well-planned project. And this is one of the steps to ensuring success. But believe it or not, a thorough inventory is a complex project that holds a lot of risk. So let's peek at ways to mitigate some of those common risks. So even though your critical business needs have been identified, those objectives still need to be met. Well, how can an inventory help? Here are some of the ways that an accurate inventory can mitigate issues out in the real world. I'm starting with staffing, the personnel issue. Here, an asset inventory provides an accurate understanding of your work capacity and aids in identifying staffing requirements to operate lab critical systems. This knowledge is leveraged to create staggered scheduling, or even simply to spread out instruments to provide adequate space for safe usage. Next, let's look at supply issues. For supply issues, system quantity can be compared to your critical business objectives. You can use information to identify bottlenecks, and supply requirements can be mitigated by stockpiling consumables or even sourcing multipliers. And let's not forget about operational issues. In this case, an accurate inventory can capture instrument quantity, operation status, allowing lab leadership to identify which instruments are ready to use today, which will need work before any testing is performed, and classify those high priorities to meet workload needs tomorrow instead of next month. And this last one, these operational issues, this is an interesting question to me. So let's look more into this. So a lab-based apparatus becomes a complex topic with multiple issues to resolve. In the context of the worldwide pandemic, the first question must be how instruments were shut down. Instruments. Or OEM recommendation.
Hi, John. This is Melissa. We're having just a small issue understanding you. You're breaking up just a little bit here. Can you please start to explain this slide from the beginning, and we'll see if we can get a little bit better reception.
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better, but yeah, we're having some technical difficulties.
I apologize, everybody. Now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Upon a closer look, a lab fleet's operational status becomes a complex topic with multiple issues to resolve. In the context of the worldwide pandemic, the first question must examine how instruments were shut down. For this data point, you're going to find two types of instruments. Those that were and were not shut down according to SOP or OEM recommendations. An accurate understanding of where your lab fleet is today will guide decisions regarding budget allocation, on-site staffing schedules, and provide actionable items while the return to operations plan is being crafted. And if I have one tip, it's to act early on those instruments that require service before operation. OEMs and vendors are running with reduced service capacity and longer backlogs than I have ever seen. So get your service on the schedule now, so that way those systems are ready when you need them. And once instrument statuses have been assessed and corrective maintenance performed, there's a larger question to examine. Does your instrument fleet still meet capacity and workflow needs? An instrument fleet takes years to procure, right? Not to mention capital. But with reduced staffing, adjusted project goals and timelines, does your lab have what it needs to meet these new deadlines? So while you're assessing the many complexities of what you have against your needs, inventory will once again come into play. Here, I recommend engaging with instrument subject matter experts to determine things like how many systems are required at once to keep your studies on track? Does your lab have enough instrumentation today to support that demand? And how long are run times? With decreased staffing capacity in the lab, do staggered scientist schedules need to be considered? So if your lab fleet doesn't meet workflow requirements today, how do you rapidly procure and install new instruments when budgets are more constrained than ever? Well, like Diane said, there are several alternative options that can help meet your needs without breaking the bank. Things like refurbished instrumentation, or leasing or demoing of brand new instrumentation that may increase your capabilities. And one that I see missed all the time, which is sharing of assets across the organization. Maybe a neighboring site has instruments that you need to build out your fleet, or maybe they need your unused titration system that's been sitting and collecting dust. This is another way an accurate inventory can be transformed into actionable data. And once you've made investments into new instrumentation, you want to ensure those investments are paying dividends, right? The absolute best way to do that is to measure and track usage and utilization. Melissa will take a deeper look at that in a few minutes, but first, let's go ahead and recap. An inventory is truly the foundation of any holistic management strategy. It provides the ability to identify gaps in your instrument fleet. It's going to enable you to source equipment across labs, departments, and sites. It'll help make better use of a constricted budget to ensure needs are met across the entire organization. And it allows you to maintain, keep that equipment serviced and within specification. Avoid downtime and delays by comparing study schedules against your required maintenance. And remember that a truly holistic plan brings all parties to the table. Leaders, directors, and managers, this is the time to give your scientific community a voice. So let's bring this back together. Location and asset inventory is driven by workflow. Workflow is driven by utilization, and utilization is driven by needs and scheduling. Now I'm pleased to hand things over to Melissa Zeier to speak about how to leverage scheduling, monitoring, and analytics to improve efficiency across the board. Melissa?
Thank you very much, John. The need for resource scheduling and measuring instrument utilization has become an emerging priority as labs return to the new normal. Scheduling provides a roadmap for day-to-day operations and adherence to social distancing guidelines and policies, while ensuring the productivity needed to meet expectations and bring product to stakeholders. As a matter of fact, during Diane's poll question about our biggest time sinks, scheduling and social distancing was the #2 response. So this is a top priority for all of us right now. Equipment and instrument utilization data monitors capacity as workflows come back online and new priorities emerge, and is crucial to identifying bottlenecks and addressing them before they become major problems. Scheduling and usage data can be purposed to determine the most used and currently underused instruments, to assess the service contract status of instruments, and make sure the needs of your critical instruments are being met. As a matter of fact, it seems that a lot of you had replied that instrument utilization is one of the key factors in determining your service schedule. So collecting that data in an accurate way is important to making sure that your instruments remain compliant. Current world events have pulled back the curtains to show the importance of contextual, time-based operational data. So with that in mind, let's go to our 5th and final polling question. Please take a minute here and respond to the polling question number 5. Which of the following do you use utilization data for? Fifth and final polling question. Okay, it looks like the responses here are pretty even across the board. We have a lot of people who are not currently using utilization data, but otherwise identifying operational risk, that's an advanced component of utilization. Scheduling and hiring decisions, that's a pretty critical component as well. New equipment purchases, using utilization data to justify that CapEx is right up there also. So thank you for responding to that poll. So we know that companies have spent years trying to understand how to balance the impact of business objectives, operational ideal state goals, and the quality and cost of asset management. The new normal of laboratory operations may alter this balance, but as Diane touched on earlier, business priorities still drive business processes. you can take advantage of the balance alterations. For example, as your operations settle into the new normal, there may be ways that you uncover to better meet your financial goals. As your inventory changes, this could be a good time to consider bulk contract reviews or volume consumables ordering. You may be able to optimize workflows so that the impact of future events will be minimized to the furthest extent possible. Your technology needs and expectations likely have changed, and now could be a good time to review this. No one asked for current world events, but perhaps operationally we can improve a few things because of them. With changes being made, opportunities will emerge to more efficiently use the instruments in your lab. John spoke a bit about sharing instruments across lab. To understand how to de-risk sharing, as well as knowing when you have the capacity to do this, you're going to need clarity into operations and data that you might not be on site right now to observe. If you need to know how your capacity measures to decide about acquiring additional instruments, being able to gather operational and workflow data across the laboratory in a standardized, automated, vendor-neutral way becomes a high priority. So let's take a look at some of the ways that you can schedule and measure your on-site activities. Let's start with shared resources. You may be asking yourself right now, how can I enforce social distancing on my labs while maintaining my expected level of productivity? Or how can I share instruments and spaces? So to do this, you may want to consider some tools to virtually manage your schedules in a flexible and collaborative way. Using shared schedules and calendars, you can be sure that on-site personnel capacity limitations are being followed. Again, this touches on that critical aspect of social distancing and scheduling. You should be looking for some features in operational scheduling software. It should allow you to access the shared calendars and resource scheduling from outside the lab, even home offices if necessary. It should have the option to monitor scheduled versus actual usage and look for functionality to report this out as well. This way, you can be sure that the schedule is being adhered and any cleaning periods or scheduled downtime between users or those staff cells that Diane spoke about are being respected. Good resource scheduling software should let you decide what spaces, in addition to instruments like labs and offices, can be scheduled to be shared. If possible, the software should have an administrative approval mechanism for reservations to ensure that your company's social distancing protocols are being followed. This way, if someone makes a reservation, there could be a level of management or administration that approves that reservation to make sure that the space or the instrument is being used in the best way possible. As social distancing regulations change, and they likely will remain dynamic as authorities learn more about exposure, risk, and indoor group settings, you can be confident in your ability to virtually manage lab operations today and in a future saturated with uncertainty. So here I've put in a few captures of Agilent's iLab operations software, specifically of the calendar view that displays you and your colleagues' scheduled time and also scheduled downtime. This also has the high-level breakdown of resources to help you find what you need and to give example of calendar and resource sharing software. This was specifically developed for laboratories. Next, by measuring and targeting instrument usage, you can monitor the performance of labs as they adjust to the new normal. Users can look at their fleet of instruments or critical workflows and see how lab productivity is ramping up. Labs can use instrument usage data to speed up decision-making and make confident database decisions. Instrument utilization data is necessary to optimize workflows, identify and correct problems, and generate other operational insights. Scientists, lab management, and procurement and finance team members can use this information to set expectations and discuss lab needs. Gathering instrument utilization data in an automated way will free up your scientific staff to focus on core tasks and provide a common language to communicate operational needs across different groups in your business. This slide has a screen capture from Agilent's Cross-Lab Asset Monitoring, our tool for collecting instrument usage data and integrating this with analytics to provide insights for laboratory performance. And once you know what instrument you use the most or the least, you can redirect scientists and team members through scheduling, which is where scheduling software becomes critical as well. So most of us are back in the laboratories and back to business, but this doesn't mean that we're finished with our shutdown procedures. It's imperative that you review your SOPs to make sure you are able to execute them and reevaluate any recovery plans that may not have been written with the pandemic in mind. Do make adjustments. Frequently debrief and analyze all phases of your restart processes and your ongoing dynamic operations to intercept needs before they become issues. Gather input from multiple sources across individual contributors and management of different functional areas. And also, prepare for known unknowns. The events that we have seen unfold over the past few months may be cyclical, and we can prepare for that. This is a good opportunity to start practicing good asset management principles every day. So once your labs are back online, your instruments are serviced, your inventory is accurate, you are stocked and ready to go, and your instrument utilization starts to ramp to your targets, be sure to recognize success and team members that contributed to this success. People are looking to leadership for actionable direction. Recognize and address these needs. We're all in this together, not just you and Agilent, but all of your industry colleagues. Learn from and execute best practices. By practicing good asset management principles every day, we'll be more prepared for stressors or shocks that emerge in the future. Thank you very much. So let's be off and do science. With that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Melissa, Diane, John, thank you for that wonderful presentation on after the shutdown, back to business as unusual. So we have time for 2 to 3 questions. So one of the first questions I received was the acquisition of consumable supplies and equipment. I mean, do you have any recommendations on how to approach sales reps and vendors in this time when we are having trouble getting consumables and instruments? So do you have any ideas about how we can handle that?
I can start off our response there. It's always best to try and preempt your needs. So if you know something is coming, do try to place your order as far in advance as possible, and also try to combine orders. The larger the order, the larger the bulk that you need, the more attention that you might get to that need. So that's the current recommendation. And we're seeing these shortages across all industries right now, not only with our laboratory consumables, but hey, look at toilet paper, right?
Right.
Yes. Procure when you can and in the quantities that you think you'll need to plan for the future.
Gotcha.
Diane or John, would you care to weigh in as well?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I think making sure that your plans are on your supplier's radar is incredibly helpful. If they know where your mind is at, where your needs are, they can help you plan as well. I've had several instances where I've communicated needs out to an OEM or a vendor and told them, expected date ranges or expected orders. And if that supply started to become short or risk of being unavailable, they've actually pinged me or reached out to say, hey, we need to get your payment, we need to get your order in now in order to maintain those dates. Nobody's a psychic, right? Nobody's a mind reader, but we can absolutely work with what we have. So, everybody has been very empathetic during this time, and I recommend just being open and communicative with your suppliers.
Okay, great. Yeah, my next question was to Diane. She talked about a spaghetti map, I believe, and could you explain a bit on that more?
Yeah, sure. A spaghetti map is actually a tool that's used within the Lean toolbox, and it's exactly how it sounds. You know what a plate of spaghetti looks like, where just imagine that each one of those noodles is someone or something that you're tracking the movement of while the process is happening. And many times you don't realize how much movement there is. So you actually sit there with a floor plan of the area that you're going to be watching, and you watch someone do a process, and you watch the sample, you watch the person, you can watch anything within that process and actually track it. And then when you look at it at the end, you'd be amazed at how much movement there is. Repetitive movements many times, where you're going back and forth to the same place. And all of that movement is, of course, waste in the lean world. So that's what a spaghetti map is. I don't know if I described that enough, but it's a map of a thing, a person. The thing could be a specimen. It could even be a requisition. And you actually map it out on a floor plan. And in the end, most of what you end up with, most of the time, is a bowl of spaghetti. And it shows you exactly how much movement there is.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you, Diane.
Mm-hmm.
So one last question, and can just tell us a little bit more about the Agilent University. I think you spoke on that earlier in the talk.
Yeah, I did touch on Agilent University. So Agilent has designed some virtual instructor-led, some classroom instructor-led, but also a lot of online courses to help familiarize and increase users' knowledge of our instruments and applications. And in response to the current global events and some of the changes we've seen, Agilent has increased the number of courses that are at no charge on the website, but also there are curriculums that you can subscribe to perhaps help train new analysts or just build the skill set of your current scientific teams. And you can subscribe to these curriculum. You can purchase credits towards some of the fee-based courses, and you can attend them online in your own real time.
Okay, thank you for that. So Diane, John, Melissa, thanks again for this presentation. It was really, really nicely done. So this brings us to the end of our 7th and final webinar in the ALMA 2020 Laboratory Manager Leadership Webinar Series. We would like to remind you that this webinar will be available on the ALMA website and our YouTube channel. We would like to thank Diane Amato, John Murray, and Melissa Zeier for presenting today, and you, our audience, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Thanks again to Agilent for sponsoring this webinar. ALMA Leadership looks forward to 2021, as we will have more webinars to improve your lab leadership skills, and we are especially looking forward to our ALMA 2021 in-person conference and workshop in October 2021 in Louisville, Kentucky. For more information on our organization, please visit labmanager.org. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.